a dysfunctional housing market, and particularly a complete madhouse when it comes to new construction condos. But it's a true catastrophe. It is like lose everything. Like you've got to think about whether they're going to go after obviously you refinanced a house to be able to put the down payment on the condo.
Canada is in shock as the condo market completely collapses, wiping out years of paper gains and exposing just how fragile the system really was. What once looked like unstoppable growth has turned into a brutal reset, with prices crashing and investor confidence quietly breaking down. Behind the scenes, thousands are now facing a painful reality they never saw coming. There's a full reset happening in real time in the housing market of Canada.
Condos in 2021 for high-rise condos, they were selling like hotcakes. They were just flying off the shelf. But virtually no one who bought them ever expected to close. They thought they would sell them through assignment. They thought they would just flip them. Never have to close, certainly never have to get a tenant.
When I look at Toronto, I see the center of it all. This is the same market where condos were trading like hot assets just a few years ago. In 2021, I was seeing high-rise units go for around $1,300 to $1,600 per square foot. Today, I'm seeing those same kinds of units clear around $745. That's not a small correction to me. That's a 40 to 50% drop, depending on the deal.
Once prices have stopped falling, they can just stay flat for 3 years. They don't have to go, there's no requirement for them to go up. I mean, that is not in the cards that I see. That's the big mistake people make.
And what stands out most is how quietly it all happened. There was no single crash moment, no clear breaking point. It just kept slipping. And a lot of people, in my view, never really bought homes. They bought expectations.
Unbelievable mess for some people. Now, we've always got to emphasize it's not an unmanageable number of people who are in this fix. It is an incredible amount of wealth destruction that's going on. There is no question of that.
Because let's be honest about what was going on. Most buyers weren't planning to live in these condos. They were treating them like financial instruments. The idea was simple. Buy pre-construction, wait, then flip it through assignment before closing. Ownership wasn't the end goal. The exit was. That mindset changed everything for me when I look at this market.
And then when more and more units come on that can't sell, obviously that drives the price down even further, and which is kind of like this.
Yeah.
Condos stopped behaving like housing and started behaving like tradable contracts. People were basically speculating on future buyers instead of building real demand around actual living needs. And that's where the gap started. Now I'm watching that gap get exposed. I'm seeing thousands of unsold units sitting in Toronto. Roughly 5,000 brand new condos that were supposed to move easily. Instead, they're just stuck. No momentum, no urgency. Just inventory sitting there, waiting for buyers who aren't showing up.
Pretty tough pill to swallow for many people.
And what I think people underestimate is how fast sentiment flipped. Back then, everything felt like it was moving up forever. Now it's the opposite. I see hesitation everywhere. Buyers are stepping back. Sellers are adjusting expectations over and over again as each new deal clears lower. That's what I call forced price discovery, and it's not clean.
Well, I'll tell you, in Ontario, it is generally expected they will seize your deposit. If you don't close on your new construction purchase, the developer will seize your deposit and the developer will litigate you.
Developers, from what I'm seeing, are no longer in expansion mode. They're in survival mode. Some are even relying on distressed buyers and vulture funds stepping in to pick up projects at deep discounts. To me, that's a clear signal this isn't a healthy cycle anymore. It's a restructuring phase. When supply hits a wall of weak demand like this, I don't see stability. I see pressure. Every new sale becomes a lower reference point. Every transaction drags expectations down a bit more. And confidence eroded faster than you could ever expect.
Today, the clearing price, the rock bottom you got to buy wholesale. Kind of clearing price for those condos is about $745 a foot. So we're talking 40-50% losses, and probably about 5,000 just brand new units sitting around unsold because nobody's buying them.
What really sticks with me is the drop from $1,600 to around $745 per square foot. Because to me, that number isn't just about pricing. It represents a belief breaking down. It tells me the market is no longer pricing in future optimism. It's only pricing what actually clears. And that shift hits hard. I know exactly what that means for a lot of people. On paper, wealth disappeared overnight. The leverage people thought they had is now just a gap staring back at them. And once that gap shows up, behavior changes fast. People don't argue with it. They react to it. They stop buying. They wait. They freeze decisions like the whole system just hit pause.
There's been some vulture funds being formed to suck up the last remaining hopeless situations.
And here's my honest read on it. I don't see a soft landing anywhere in this. I see a slow, uncomfortable reset that's dragging everything back to reality, whether people are ready or not. Because the hardest part isn't even the price drop. It's realizing how much of what people called value was never really value in the first place. And I don't think people fully understand how far this has already spread. Toronto is not the end of this story for me. It's the starting point, the test case. The first crack showed what was actually going on underneath.
Toronto is the epicenter of problems. The BC is in not good shape at all, and potentially will get worse. BC just might be a year and a half behind Toronto in the problems.
When I look at British Columbia, I don't see a different market. I see a delayed version of the same breakdown. In my view, BC is roughly 12 to 18 months behind Toronto. That's not a different cycle. That's just a lag. And the signs are already there if you actually look closely.
Looks like you're in a situation where one of them is not going to even finish. It's going to be like unfinished condos.
Projects that were supposed to keep running are slowing down. Some cranes that used to signal endless growth are either gone or just sitting idle, like someone turned the engine off mid-drive. And in some cases, I'm seeing receivership starting to show up on projects that were supposed to be safe bets. Kelowna is a perfect example in my opinion. Developments that were once marketed like guaranteed future gold mines are now quietly running into financial stress. And to me, this doesn't feel isolated at all. It feels like the same movie replaying with a delay button pressed on it. Same script, different timeline. That's it. And the real trigger for all of this, in my view, goes back to interest rates.
And a lot of pain for people that bought pre-construction because the mortgage interest rate obviously changed as well, right? You went from a Bank of Canada rate of 0.25 to 5. And then a lot of people that qualified, in the 0.25 Bank of Canada rate.
Because that's where the illusion actually cracked. I still remember when rates were sitting near 0.25%. That environment shaped everything. People were qualifying for mortgages under conditions that didn't reflect reality. Deals were built on the assumption that this was the new normal. Nobody was seriously pricing in stress. Everything was priced on stability that didn't actually exist. Then reality hit, fast. Rates moved to nearly 5%, and that didn't just make borrowing more expensive. It completely broke the mental model people were using to justify every decision they made.
And then there's another component to this, and that's the mortgage resets. During COVID, that rate, like I said, it was at 0.25, the Bank of Canada rates. A lot of people are getting mortgages, like 5-year mortgages under 2%. And now that's all starting to mature as well. So now we're looking at the great reset.
And I want to be clear on this. This wasn't a small adjustment. It was a shock to the system. Because suddenly, the numbers didn't work the same way. The assumptions didn't hold. And what looked safe under 0.25% started collapsing under real-world cost pressure. That's when everything started to unravel in slow motion. Not because demand vanished overnight, but because the foundation people built their decisions on stopped making sense. And once that happens, there's no easy reset button. Just a long, uncomfortable adjustment back to reality. Now I see borrowers dealing with renewal shocks where payments are jumping 18 to 26%. And the thing is, a lot of them aren't even in default. Not yet, but they are squeezed, tight, quietly adjusting everything in their lives just to stay afloat.
In the foreseeable future, and then did in unprecedented fashion, they raised them 19-fold. And now a lot of these people are doing their resets. And, people, if you don't have to pre-qualify again, like some people are trying to, they change it to a 30-year amortization, and then you have to re-qualify.
And that's the part most people miss. The stress doesn't always show up as missed payments right away. Sometimes it shows up as cancelled plans, paused spending, no upgrades, no renovations, no movement in life. Everything just freezes slowly. And once that starts happening at scale, confidence doesn't fall. It disappears because nobody built their plan around rates moving this fast. That's the real shock. Not just higher payments, but broken assumptions. Now, on top of that, there's something people really underestimate: the legal side of this whole pre-construction world.
The stat is half of Canadians are about $200 away from their breaking point, and those refinances are, like, a lot of them are, $1,500, $2,000 more than what they were paying before.
Because I've looked at how these contracts work, and honestly, I don't think most buyers really understood what they were signing up for. If you don't close, you don't just walk away clean, you lose your deposit. And in many cases, you can actually get sued for the difference if the developer resells the unit at a lower price. So now you've got a situation where people are stuck in two directions at once.
But it sure does mean that they're in a financial constraint. Like, there's going to be no, trips to Disney World. Okay, that ain't happening. There's going to be no, we're not going to be doing any big renovation of our property. So,
on one side, the value of what they bought has dropped. On the other side, they still carry legal exposure if they walk away. And if they also used their existing home or refinance to fund that down payment, then it gets even more complicated. Because now it's not just one asset under pressure, it's a chain of exposure. One decision can ripple into multiple losses. That's why I call it a debt shadow. Because it doesn't just sit in one place, it follows. And while all of this is happening, the pressure isn't even evenly spread across the country. You start seeing very different stages of stress depending on the region.
So there's no question prices will continue to decline in Ontario this year for the extent of all of 2026. And we believe it will certainly decline in British Columbia. We're already into 8 months of decline in southern Alberta.
Southern Alberta, for example, is already about 8 months into steady price declines. It's not new anymore there. It's already in motion. Then you've got places like Brampton, which honestly stands out as one of the most extreme stress zones I've seen. That's where mortgage delinquency is showing up heavily, and in some pockets, prices are down as much as 40%. That's not a small correction. That's a deep reset.
Prices have leveled off in Quebec. They're no longer advancing. There's always some regional distortion here, right? Like it's like there's no such thing as one completely unified housing market in any given province. There's regions, there's neighborhoods, there's always variation.
And then you've got Quebec, which is in a different phase altogether. It's not collapsing, but it's not growing either. It's basically flattening out. No real upward push. No recovery momentum. Just sitting still. So when I look at the entire map, I don't see one single market anymore. I see different stages of decline happening at the same time. And that's what makes this so uncomfortable. Because there is no clean bottom across the board. There's just different regions moving through the same cycle at different speeds. And from where I'm standing, none of them are really at the finish line yet.
Real estate prices aren't going to recover in 2026, and anyone telling you otherwise is trying to sell you something or hasn't really taken a look at the data.
One thing that doesn't get talked about enough in all of this is rentals. Because while everyone is obsessed with condo prices, something else is quietly stacking pressure in the background. Take Kelowna, for example. You've got plans for nearly a 30% increase in rental capacity. On paper, that sounds like relief. More supply, better affordability, problem solved. But in reality, I see it differently. When supply jumps like that and demand doesn't keep up, rents don't stabilize. In fact, they drop. And that's where it gets uncomfortable for landlords. Because now you've got declining rents hitting at the same time as rising carrying costs. That's a tight squeeze from both sides. Tenants benefit in the short term, sure. Housing gets a bit more affordable. But underneath that, the system is actually weakening, not strengthening. It's a mismatch. Too many units arriving into a demand cycle that's already slowing down. And when I zoom out from that, I start seeing something bigger happening with people themselves.
We're going to the States. We're going to live in Houston. We're going to Costa Rica. We're leaving for Portugal. We can't make it here. It doesn't make any economic sense to stay here.
I'm hearing more and more conversations about leaving. Not just frustration, but actual exit plans. Some are looking at the US, others at places like Costa Rica or Portugal. It's not just a vacation fantasy anymore. It's becoming a financial decision. At the same time, the age of first-time homebuyers has quietly shifted from around 27 to nearly 40. That tells you everything. Ownership isn't a milestone anymore for a lot of people. It's becoming something they just keep pushing further and further away. And when I connect those dots, I don't just see a housing issue. I see a long-term erosion of confidence. Wealth tied to housing isn't really compounding the way it used to. In a lot of cases, it's just sitting there under pressure or slipping backwards. Now, the part I think people underestimate the most is what happens next.
That was what happened in the 90s. The market went nowhere. It fell, 90, 91, 92, 93, 94. And then it was just level for a couple of years. It didn't go up at all. And also consider that there's inflation for everything else. So when you start to calculate inflation in, the losses and the quiet in the market is even worse than you think.
Even when prices stop falling, that doesn't mean recovery. I've seen markets like this before, especially in the 1990s, where prices dropped and then just sat there. No real movement, no real growth, just flat for years. And the problem with flat is that inflation doesn't stop. So even if prices don't change, your real purchasing power still erodes in the background. It feels stuck, but it's actually slipping.
The average age of first-time home buyers in Canada has gone 30 years ago. It was about age 27. Today it's 40. So if you understand averages, that means there's a lot of people over 40 who are first-time home buyers, which is absolutely batshit crazy. It doesn't make any sense.
That's why I don't see a quick rebound here. Not a clean one, at least. Real estate doesn't have a rule that says it must go back up. And honestly, when I look at everything together, I don't see a smooth recovery story. I see something slower, heavier, and more uncomfortable. And that so-called light at the end of the tunnel. It might not be a recovery signal at all. It might just be the next part of the cycle coming straight at us.